And good morning. It's time now for another edition of Panola Pride here on KGAS AM 1590, FM 104.3, and Falcon Telecable Channel 12. Panola Pride with your host, Jerry Hansen.
Good morning and welcome to this beautiful Thursday morning. I'm Jerry Hansen, your host. This is Panola Pride, the heartbeat of East Texas. And our guest today is Mrs. LaGrone. And we'll be talking about historical happenings throughout the East Texas area. Have an announcement to make first to remind everyone to mark your calendar for the International Boundary Marker Dedication. That's going to be on August the 22nd at 3 p.m. at the Texas-Louisiana line. Now, that's right on Highway 31. It's right on the highway, just about, isn't it?
Yes, just a few feet off the highway.
This is going to be a cooperative project between Panola County and DeSoto Parish historians. So, again, that is August the 22nd at 3 p.m. So mark your calendar and plan to attend. I think that'll be a big day.
And bring a lawn chair to be comfortable.
Very good. Great idea.
Because there are no bleachers out there, of course, in that little park.
Our guest is Mrs. LaGrone, and she, once again, has a very interesting program. And, Sean, don't forget to run the video.
Well, I always expect something to happen during the week that will give a hint about what we ought to lift up on Thursday morning. And it happened this week, just like it always does. So our topic today is a daring young Texas Confederate veteran.
Okay.
His tragic story. But he is one of 4 brothers who marched away to war. And only 2 of the 4 came back. This was about the kind of story that many families had to tell, but not always does a family track down what happened to them if they didn't get back. So I have spent many hours and much digging trying to find out what became of this baby brother of my grandfather. And finally, this week, the shoe fell and the last record came into my hands. So I thought it was certainly a worthy story to tell. To back up a little bit, these 4 brothers were my grandfather and his 3 brothers, all sons of John Stone, who was an early pioneer in this county.
Mm-hmm.
And John Stone settled out on Irons Bayou, and I have his story all the way back to England, the background. But this family was Panola Countyans. These boys were settled for years, from 1842, for 20 years, you see, before actually they were involved in the war. Well, the 2 older ones, they went 2 by 2, thinking that they'd be able to stay together maybe. So the 2 older ones were James Childs Stone and John Nichols Stone, and they were in the very first company that was organized in Panola County. And Captain Craig was the commander of that company, and it won considerable fame because it was such a fighting unit. This was the 10th Texas Cavalry, and this was Company F, and the most of them were Panola Countyans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this was the 2 older brothers, and they were able to see each other occasionally, certainly, but they would get shifted in the combat to different companies. Then that was in the fall, in September, that company was organized. The next spring, in May, and these 2 boys volunteered. All of them in that company volunteered. Mm-hmm. Well, in May, the other 2 brothers, who were the unmarried ones, that was my grandfather, Sylvanus Stone, and their youngest brother, Peter Wynn Stovall Stone. And they volunteered to go into the war in May. And you see, their brothers had been in since September, so about 6 months, more than 6 months. Anyway, these 2 younger ones enrolled at Minden, Texas. You know where Minden, Texas is, over here between Henderson and Nacogdoches. Okay, that was the center where they went to be enrolled in May. All right, they were both single men. The 2 older ones both had families and left families to go to the war. But these 2 single ones were at home until the spring. All right, then I moved. I have done extensive research on all four of them, but I got so wrapped up in the youngest one because his story was most tragic of all. When the end of the war came, everybody looked for the homecoming, and of these four, only two came home. James Childs was the oldest one. He had already been released from his duties. He just signed up for 1 year, and he was over age already. And so, and he was a widower. His wife had died and left him with 4 children. So he was already out before the war was over. And the brother that went in with him, John Nichols, the last heard of him was in 1863, and he was at a hospital in Alabama, and was thought to be a nurse in the hospital, a Confederate nurse, and he did not come home. He didn't get back. They never saw him again. All right, that was the two older ones. Now, Sylvanus, my grandfather, was next, and he did come home at the end of the war in 1865 and married Mary Emmeline Wyatt, whose family lived in the Sandhills area, where the coal mining has been. And they married, but her father had already disappeared also, and they later found all of his story, that he died in a prisoner of war camp in Indiana. That's the Wyatt. So she married Sylvanus. They had been sweethearts before he left. And the youngest one, Peter Wynn, did not come back. Now, Sylvanus and Mary Emmeline lived out their lives, which were very short. Sylvanus was the father of my father, and he lived only 5 years after the war. And he and his wife, and his father and his wife, are buried in Old Ross Cemetery, right on the county line up here next to Rusk County. Well, what about the youngest one? He didn't come back. And for over, I believe I figured out 103 years, nobody knew what became of him. And that's when I discovered him. I discovered that he went to war and he had a bad time. I got his records. I have his entire military record, and followed him whether he answered the roll call or not, and why he didn't if he didn't. And he evidently was a fragile young man, 20 years old, very fragile, because somebody would answer for him that he was ill and in the hospital, or he was this and that. So I just got wrapped up in what happened to him. And he had already been described by his commander as a crack artilleryman and a member of a group of 44 that were an expert artillery company. Okay. I started looking into that and began to find bits and pieces. As I said, from the National Archives, I got the military record, but I was not just satisfied with the bare military record. I kept trying to find out more. I have written his story 3 times to record it in the records of the Civil War. First of all, I wrote it in this book that I published on the Stones. This is his story, and this was in 1967. I thought I knew the whole story. But when I came along with this little book here on all of the soldiers that I could find, and I'm still finding them, from Panola County, I called it This Very Unreasonable War, and I had found a little more about him, and this one came out in 1972, 5 years after the first one. This book came out, and I had a little more to add to it. Then when we did the Panola County history in 79, was published in 79, this gave me 7 more years, and I'd found some more. And I thought, surely the story is complete this time, because I had found that he died in the hospital in New Orleans and so on. But I had gone to Mansfield. He was captured just before the Battle of Mansfield in Louisiana. His whole company was. And this was the story that stirred my interest in doing further research on this one young Panola Countian who was beloved by his family and disappeared from the earth. And this is the story of war, you know. This happens even today when communications are so much better. We still have this story. So I went down the list of events that I found concerning him. And this week, last Tuesday, the last record came into my hands, and that's what keyed me into talking about him this time. These two younger brothers, as I said, had enlisted at Minden, Texas, and they thought they'd be together, but they were in the same regiment, but they were in different companies. And they were in an infantry company, and this infantry company, Peter Wynn, the younger one, gradually moved into this artillery unit, which was a powerful, small company. And so his grim record for the desolate story is what we'll touch on now. He enlisted in May of 1862, and in December that year he was absent from the roll call. I call it roll call, that's not the official name for it, but anyway, checking on them. And muster roll is what they call it. And they reported him sick in the hospital at Camp Nelson. Okay, that's the first time that I discovered that he was accident prone, maybe, or tragedy prone, and if there's a bullet, he got it, and so on. That was, you see, 6 months after he went in. Then he was in the hospital. Then in February, which would be still not quite a year, in February of '63, he was sent to Captain Crawford's company on special duty, but he was accounted for. Then by August that year, in 1863, he was absent and reported to be in Texas for a 50-day recovery. Evidently, he'd been wounded in battle then. They didn't go into detail in the military records, but he was absent and was on the roll as to be absent for 50 days at home for recovery. And when that 50 days was up, he still was absent, and they answered for him that the surgeon gave him another month. And that made it 3 months that it took him to recover from whatever had hit him. And after that 3 months, by February '64, now that was not quite 2 years after he went into the war, and he'd had all this illness and everything, he was back with his company. And that was just as the Federals were about to take Vicksburg. And they began, the Confederate Army that was stationed at Shreveport saw that the Federals were coming this way from Vicksburg, and Vicksburg was going to fall. They'd held out a long time, but they were exhausted and out of everything, so they were going to fall. And when they did, they knew that North Louisiana and East Texas would be next. And so his company was sent to a little fort in the swamp between Mansfield and Vicksburg, near Marksville, Louisiana. And that's New Orleans, and the South Louisiana was already in the hands of the Federals. And they were trying to sweep up this way and take the rest of Louisiana and East Texas. Okay, there were 44 of these men placed here in a delaying action with orders to stop the Federals. 44 men faced 4,000 Federals. Well, you know what that story was. They didn't have a chance. They shot this light artillery and killed lots of Federals, but some of them died too. And they finally were taken prisoner, the whole company, and were sent by way of Baton Rouge on down to New Orleans. And Peter Wynn was one of the ones that lived through the attack, but he was taken prisoner along with the others and sent to New Orleans. All right. I have his story then from New Orleans. When Vicksburg fell, these 4,000 Federals just came storming across. And, of course, they were excited with their victory at Vicksburg. They worked so hard to take that. And they expected to be in Shreveport within a few weeks. And, of course, we know the story of Mansfield and Pleasant Hill that kept them from getting there, or from getting to East Texas, too. But it cost a lot of lives as well. Now, this Peter Wynn, his battery was considered, and I read the report of the officers, it was considered the finest artillery unit that General Taylor, who was the head of all of that campaign, Red River campaign, this was his finest artillery unit, and of course they wiped them out. Took them to New Orleans, as I said. So on May the 9th, he was admitted then to a hospital in New Orleans. This is the Federal Hospital at the prisoner of war camp. And he was diagnosed with acute pneumonia. Well, 100 years ago, that was incurable. Actually, pneumonia was a deadly thing. Still pretty deadly with even modern medicine. And he was in the hospital for 12 days and survived the pneumonia and was released from that hospital, and I got every bit of that record, of the hospital record. And he survived the pneumonia and was released to go back to duty in the prison camp. Okay, he was released on May the 22nd. And on the 25th, 3 days later, he was carried back to that hospital and diagnosed with typhoid fever. Now, his body already was wiped out just about it, and he got the typhoid fever, the germ, in the hospital. The hospitals were not, free of every kind of disease. It was there. And he just lasted 3 days out of the hospital and was back in it with typhoid fever. And he was in the hospital that time 4 days and died. Typhoid fever finished him off. And this record here goes through everything, his death, and even an inventory of what he had, which is almost nothing. A hat, a pair of pants, and just, listed these things, and signed by his doctor, and so on. And it even gives his funeral, his burial place. This is the inventory of what he had. Tells that he was buried in Cypress Grove Cemetery number 2, which was the second cemetery for the veterans. For the prisoners of war. And his grave, even I got this grave number, 225. So I said, well, this is it. This is the story. Someday I'll go down there to that gravesite. But time passes, and I kept reading and finding little hints, but I didn't get to go. I never had gotten to go to look up that cemetery. That's a major thing for me, to go to New Orleans and look up that cemetery. All right. In my cooperation with the DeSoto Parish people for this marker dedication we're going to have, I have had Mr. Joyner, Jim Joyner, who is the president over there, visit me several times. And in the conversations about the Civil War, he's interested in it too, and interested in the Battle of Mansfield, of course, I told him about this young man, my grandfather's brother, that just before the Battle of Mansfield he was taken prisoner, and I told him his gruesome story. And I says, I even know the cemetery where he's buried and the grave number, but I haven't gotten to go there yet. He says, I'm going to New Orleans next week. And he volunteered, says, I will take a picture of that grave for you. And I was really pleased that I would have then something to verify these records. Okay, this Tuesday, day before yesterday, he came back and brought me all that's available to verify my records. That cemetery is not there anymore, but it has an office that is the record of all the graves that were there. And here is Win Stovall Stone. Died of typhoid fever. Goes on Confederate States of America. He died at St. Louis Hospital. And here's the man in charge. And he was a rebel prisoner of war. All right. He said, Ms. LeGrone, I had a conference with them about it. And I told them I wanted to take a picture. And they said, go out there and take a picture of that street, because all that area has been leveled and a street is on it now. And he said that when, and this man was an authority on what had happened to all of this, and they had the records. He says, I can find every one of them for you. And they made copies of the page that he was on. And so there's no more to find. This is it. And so at last, the final resting place is under the street. And the man said they could see the cavities as they dragged, with all this machinery, leveled all this area, but said there's nothing else there. It was, of course, after all this time.
Yeah.
And so this is Cypress Grove Cemetery number 2, see? Official from the cemetery. The other had been from the hospital where he died. Now this is the cemetery where there is still a record of his burial. So all that can be found out about this daring young man who had a sad story all the way, and his family lost him when he left and never knew the difference. But what did I want to say with this sort of explanation? I want to say that if there's a question in anybody's ancestry that you want to find out about, if you're eager enough to do it, somewhere you'll find it. Just don't give up. Keep digging. That's what I've done. Now, I've been digging on this story since in the 1960s. But I'm satisfied now. There's nothing else to get.
Today you found the answer.
Today, this is it.
Very good. May I jump in and remind,
Yes.
Our time is really pushing here, but pardon me, to remind everybody about the ceremony that will be the International Boundary Marker dedication, August the 22nd, 3 p.m. at the Texas-Louisiana line on Highway 31.
Right.
And this is a cooperative project between Panola County and DeSoto Parish historians. And everyone, please mark your calendar. Ms. LeGrone, thank you for being with us. This is, it's amazing that a project can be, you can start on something.
It can go all the way if you'll go.
Hit a few brick walls, but hang in there.
History buffs help each other. And he just jumped right in and says, I'm going to New Orleans. I'll take a picture of the grave. I said, oh, I would so like, because I won't get down there now. My health has gone bad on me, and I'm limited at travel I can do. So I won't get down there. And he came back with this and says, I'm sorry. He said, they told me to go take a picture of the street, and I didn't think you'd want that.
No. We want to thank our viewing and listening audience for being with us and invite you to join us each Thursday as we talk about history around the East Texas area, and invite you to stay tuned. Sue Smith and the County Fair Grapevine coming up next. Have a great day.
The most excellent way to take the sting out of going back to school. I just can't say it. Okay, here's the deal. Get Mom and Dad to donate $10 for TVs and VCRs in the classroom, and they'll get cable TV installed for free. That means they get a great deal on cable, and we get fewer lectures from Mr.